Hey y'all! Tonight we squeeze into a smoky Viking longhouse where the air is thick with the scent of pine resin, roasting fish, and, oddly enough, freshly whittled toothpicks. You settle onto a rough wooden bench, knees bumping against a table sticky with spilled mead, and blink as your eyes adjust to the flickering firelight. Shadows leap across the woven walls, and somewhere nearby, a burly Norseman lets out a yawn so wide you can almost count his molars. Don't get too comfortable just yet. You're about to discover that in this world of sagas and swordplay, dental hygiene is a matter of daily survival. Seriously, you probably won't survive this era's breakfast without a toothpick, unless you fancy a mouthful of fish bones and barley husks. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the longhouse, careful not to trip over a stray shield or the snoozing family goat. The floor is packed earth, swept clean by the youngest children, but you can still feel the grit under your bare toes. The ceiling is low, and you duck instinctively as a rack of drying fish swings overhead. You're not the only one awake. There's a quiet buzz as a few early risers shuffle about, poking at embers or rummaging for breakfast. A matronly figure, her hair braided with bits of bone and amber, sits by the hearth. She's carving something small and slender from a birch twig, her knife moving with the kind of practiced ease that comes from years of repetition. You realize she's making toothpicks, dozens of them, each one destined for the family's morning routine. Historians still argue whether these humble picks were shared communally or jealously. Guarded as personal treasures, but tonight you get your own. You pick up a toothpick and run your thumb along its grain. It's surprisingly smooth, the tip whittled to a precise point. A little moss is wrapped around the end, apparently for extra cleaning power, or maybe just a touch of Viking flair. The Norse took their oral hygiene seriously, even if their idea of minty fresh was more birch sap than spearmint. The longhouse is a hive of activity, even before dawn. Someone is already stirring a pot of barley porridge, and the smell mingles with the sharp tang of wood smoke. You hear the rhythmic scraping of toothpicks against teeth, a sound as common here as the clatter of wooden bowls. It's oddly soothing, like the world's oldest ASMR track, punctuated only by the occasional satisfied grunt. You glance around and notice that nearly everyone has a toothpick tucked behind an ear or slipped into a woven belt. It's not just a tool, it's a badge of adulthood, a sign that you've survived enough meals to know the dangers of a stray fishbone. Some toothpicks are plain, others carved with runes or tiny animal heads. There's even a rumor that the Jarl, think Viking CEO, has a toothpick made of walrus ivory, though no one's ever seen it up close. There's a certain pride in keeping your teeth clean, especially in a world where dentists are more myth than reality. You watch as a young boy, barely old enough to swing a wooden sword, carefully cleanse his teeth under his mother's watchful eye. She nods approvingly, then hands him a second pick, just in case. Toothpick duels are not unheard of, especially among the younger set, though the adults pretend not to notice. As the fire crackles and the longhouse fills with the sounds of waking life, you realize that cleanliness here is a communal affair. There's no running water, no fancy toothbrushes, but there's a shared understanding. A clean mouth is a happy mouth, and a happy mouth means one less thing to worry about when you're facing down a berserker before breakfast. You lean back, toothpick in hand, and let the warmth of the hearth seep into your bones. The day is just beginning, and already you feel a little more Viking. Minus the helmet, of course. Those horns are a myth, by the way, but we'll let you keep your cozy illusions for now. The Longhouse is stirring with the slow, deliberate rhythm of a Viking morning. You blink away the last traces of sleep as you watch the family's eldest son, hair wild and eyes half closed, shuffle over to the hearth. He yawns, stretches, and, without missing a beat, grabs a fresh birch toothpick from the pile. It's as natural as reaching for a cup of coffee in your own kitchen. You follow suit, twirling your own pick between your fingers, feeling the faint stickiness of sap and the roughness where the bark was peeled away. Outside, the world is still wrapped in a blue-gray mist. The air is crisp, tinged with the scent of dew and distant pine. You step out for a moment, toothpick in mouth, and watch as a neighbor, already up and about, scrapes the moss off his own pick before giving his teeth a thorough once-over. There's a certain choreography to it. Scrape, twist, flick. It's almost meditative, a sleepy ritual that says, yes, I survived another night in the land of frost giants and midnight sun. Historians still argue whether Vikings really used moss on their toothpicks for cleaning, or if it was just a bit of Norse improvisation when birch twigs ran short. Some say the moss added a gentle abrasiveness, others claim it was for flavor, and a few suggest it was simply a way to show off that you had access to the softest, greenest moss in the region. Either way, you can't help but notice that it feels oddly soothing, like a gentle scrub for your morning breath. You wander back inside, where the rest of the household is slowly coming to life. The matriarch is already barking gentle orders, sending the youngest out to fetch water and the middle children to gather eggs. You catch a glimpse of a teenage girl, still in her night tunic, carefully inspecting her toothpick for splinters before getting to work on her molars. It's a small moment, but it speaks volumes about Viking priorities. A clean mouth, even before breakfast. The breakfast itself is a lesson in texture. You sit cross-legged at the low table, staring down at a bowl of barley porridge studded with dried berries, and, if you're lucky, a chunk of smoked fish. Every bite is a gamble. Will it be soft and sweet, or will you crunch down on a bit of grit left over from the grinding stone? You quickly learn why toothpicks are so essential. Even the most careful cook can't keep every pebble out of the meal, and the last thing you want is to start your day with a chipped tooth. There's a gentle camaraderie in the morning routine. You watch as the family members, one by one, finish their meal and reach for a toothpick. There's no shame in it, no hiding behind napkins or ducking out of sight. Here, picking your teeth is as ordinary as tying your shoes. In fact, it's almost a point of pride to show you care about your health, even if your idea of dental insurance is a sharp stick and a mother's watchful eye. You notice that some toothpicks are more elaborate than others. The eldest daughter, clearly a favorite, has a pick carved with swirling patterns, maybe a gift from a suitor, or just the result of a long winter night and a sharp knife. The youngest, meanwhile, is still learning the ropes, occasionally poking her gums and wincing. There's a gentle laugh from the adults, but also a nod of approval. Everyone has to start somewhere. The fire crackles, sending sparks up into the rafters. You lean back, toothpick in hand, and listen to the quiet hum of the household. It's a moment of peace before the day's chaos, a chance to savor the simple pleasure of clean teeth and a full belly. You can't help but wonder how many modern mornings would improve with a little less rush and a little more mossy toothpicking. Of course, there are always debates. Some in the Longhouse swear by Birch, others by Willow. A few old-timers claim that the best picks come from juniper, with its spicy scent and natural antiseptic properties. Historians still argue whether these preferences were regional, personal, or just the result of whatever tree happened to be closest to the door. You try them all, just to be sure, and decide that anything is better than nothing when you've got a stubborn bit of barley stuck between your teeth. As the morning brightens and the Longhouse fills with laughter, you realize that this simple act, this daily dance of tooth and twig, is more than just a matter of hygiene. It's a link to the past, a reminder that even the fiercest warriors needed a little help getting ready for the day. And as you tuck your own toothpick behind your ear, you can't help but feel just a little bit more Viking, ready to face whatever adventures or breakfast hazards await. You're barely done with your own toothpicking when the next round of breakfast surprises arrives. The Viking diet, you quickly realize, is a masterclass in contrasts. Hearty, rough, and occasionally a little bit dangerous for your dental work. You scoop up another spoonful of barley porridge, this time with a generous helping of dried fish flakes and a drizzle of honey. The flavors are earthy and sweet, but the textures, well, let's just say you're grateful for that toothpick. The daily menu here is built for survival, not for comfort. Grains like barley and rye are staples, ground on stone querns that leave behind a fine grit. You crunch down and feel a tiny pebble, a reminder that even the best cooks can't filter out every bit of stone. Historians still argue whether the Vikings actually minded this, or if they simply accepted a little dental danger as part of their morning routine. Some scholars suggest that the constant presence of grit wore down Viking teeth, giving them a distinctive flatness that archaeologists can spot centuries later. You glance around the table and notice how everyone, from the youngest child to the oldest grandfather, eats with a kind of practiced caution. No one wolfs down their food. Instead, each bite is measured, chewed thoughtfully, and followed by a quick flick of the toothpick. It's a rhythm you fall into easily, especially after your second run-in with a stubborn barley husk. The toothpick becomes your silent companion, always at the ready. Fish is another mainstay, and not just any fish. Herring, cod, and salmon, smoked or dried to last through the long winters. You pick at a piece of smoked herring, savoring the salty tang, and immediately find a tiny bone wedged between your teeth. It's almost a rite of passage, and you watch as the others handle it with nonchalance, a quick twist of the pick, and the bone is gone. There's even a bit of friendly competition. Who can extract the tiniest bone without grimacing? You give it your best shot, but the matriarch wins hands down, barely pausing in her conversation. Dairy makes an appearance too. Thick, tangy skyr, and the occasional chunk of hard cheese. These are safer, tooth-wise, but you're warned not to get too comfortable. The cheese, aged in wooden barrels, sometimes hides a splinter or two from the aging racks. You make a mental note to check your next bite before committing fully. Occasionally, there's a treat. A handful of wild berries, tart and bursting with juice, or a piece of honeycomb, sticky and sweet. The honey sticks to your teeth in a way that only a toothpick can fix. and you find yourself reaching for your trusty birch stick once again. It's a small price to pay for a taste of sweetness in a world where sugar is a rare luxury. There's a quirky tradition you notice. A few of the older men dip their toothpicks in a mug of mead before using them. Supposedly, it adds flavor and kills the morning breath, though you suspect it's just an excuse for an early sip. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread custom or just the invention of a few particularly creative Vikings. Either way, it adds a bit of fun to the otherwise utilitarian act of tooth cleaning. As you settle into the meal, you start to appreciate the Viking approach to food. Practical, resourceful, and always with an eye toward survival. Every ingredient is used, every scrap saved, and nothing goes to waste. Not even the toothpicks, which are sometimes tossed into the fire to add a little scent to the smoke. You wonder if anyone will notice if you pocket a particularly well-carved pick as a souvenir. The conversation at the table drifts from weather to livestock to the latest news from the neighboring village. You listen, picking your teeth in time with the others, and realize that this simple act is woven into the fabric of daily life. It's not just about cleanliness, it's about community, about sharing the small rituals that make even the roughest breakfast a little bit softer. You catch the eye of the eldest son, who grins and offers you a toothpick carved with a tiny wolf's head. "For luck," he says, and you accept it with a nod. It's a small gesture, but it feels significant. A reminder that even in a world of grit and bones, there's always room for a little kindness. As the meal winds down, you lean back, toothpick in hand, and let the warmth of the fire and the gentle hum of conversation lull you into a state of contentment. You survived breakfast, and your teeth are all the better for it. Not bad for your first real Viking morning. The sun is barely above the horizon when you hear the telltale clatter of shields and the low rumble of voices outside the Longhouse. Today, you're joining a group of Vikings preparing for a journey. Maybe a quick raid across the fjord, maybe just a trading trip. But either way, it's a chance to see how oral hygiene survives the chaos of life on the move. You pocket your lucky wolf-head toothpick and follow the others toward the riverbank, where the Longship waits, sleek and hungry for adventure. The air is brisk, briny with the scent of seaweed and the promise of distant lands. You clamber aboard, ducking under the carved dragon prow, and find your place among the crew. The benches are rough-hewn, the oars cold beneath your hands, and you quickly realize that comfort is not a Viking priority. Still, there's a sense of camaraderie as everyone settles in, each person with their own bundle of essentials: food, weapons, and, tucked carefully into a pouch or belt, a trusty toothpick. As the Longship glides out onto the water, the rhythm of rowing takes over. It's hypnotic. Pull, breathe, pull, breathe. But even in the midst of this steady exertion, you notice the small rituals continue. During a break, a few of the crew pull out their toothpicks, cleaning their teeth with practiced ease. One man, his beard flecked with crumbs from a hasty breakfast, offers you a spare pick carved from willow. "Best for the road," he claims, and you give it a try. Surprisingly flexible, with a faintly sweet scent. Historians still argue whether Vikings actually carried personal hygiene kits on their travels or simply improvised with whatever nature provided. Some suggest that a well-prepared raider might tuck a bundle of birch picks into his gear, while others believe the Norse were content to snap a twig from the nearest tree when the need arose. Either way, you're grateful for your own supply as you nibble on a bit of dried fish and immediately find a bone wedged between your molars. The journey is long, and the food is, let's say, functional. Hard bread, dried meat, and the ever-present fish, each bite a potential hazard for the unwary. You watch as the crew trades toothpicks and stories, comparing the merits of different woods and sharing tips for avoiding splinters. There's even a running joke about the toothpick tax. If you borrow someone's pick, you owe them a favor later. You make a mental note to keep track of your own. The riverbanks slip by, lined with whispering reeds and the occasional startled heron. The world feels both vast and intimate, the silence broken only by the splash of oars and the quiet murmur of conversation. You find yourself relaxing into the rhythm, toothpick in hand, as the Longship glides toward its destination. At midday, the crew pulls ashore for a brief rest. You stretch your legs, grateful for the chance to move, and join a few others by the water's edge. Here, the toothpicks come out in force. After a meal of smoked eel and coarse bread, everyone is eager to clean their teeth. One woman shows off a pick made from juniper, its tip stained dark from frequent use. "Keeps the spirits away," she jokes, tapping it against her teeth. You're not sure if she means evil spirits or just the spirits of last night's mead, but you nod in agreement. There's a kind of intimacy in these moments, a shared understanding that even the fiercest warriors need a little self-care. You watch as the youngest member of the crew, barely old enough to row, struggles with a stubborn bit of fish. An older man offers advice: twist, don't poke. And soon the boy is grinning, toothpick triumphantly in hand. Historians still argue whether these hygiene habits were unique to Vikings or shared by other seafaring cultures. Some point to similar practices among the Saxons and Franks, while others insist that the Norse took it to a new level, turning toothpicking into an art form. You're inclined to agree with the latter, especially after witnessing a particularly elaborate toothpick duel. Two men, each armed with a slender birch stick, trying to knock a crumb from the other's beard without breaking their own pick. It's silly, but it breaks the monotony and draws a round of laughter from the crew. As the sun dips lower, the Longship continues its journey, the crew fortified by clean teeth and good humor. You lean back, toothpick tucked behind your ear, and watch the sky shift from blue to gold. There's a sense of satisfaction in these small rituals, a reminder that even on the wildest adventures, a little cleanliness goes a long way. You close your eyes for a moment, lulled by the gentle rocking of the boat and the soft scrape of toothpicks all around you. The world feels safe, even here on the edge of the unknown, and you drift into a light doze, dreaming of birch forests and the quiet pride of a well-cleaned mouth. You wake to the sound of knives scraping softly against wood, and for a moment, you're not sure if you're still dreaming. The Longship has pulled ashore for the evening, and the crew is scattered along the riverbank, each person engaged in a quiet, almost meditative task: carving toothpicks. The sun is low, painting the water gold, and the air is filled with the scent of wood shavings and damp earth. You wander over to a group huddled beneath a leaning birch tree. One of the older women gestures for you to sit, handing you a small knife and a freshly cut twig. The wood is pale, almost white, and you can see why birch is the favorite. It's soft enough to carve easily, but strong enough to hold a sharp point. You watch as she demonstrates, her hands steady and sure, whittle away the bark, shape the tip, smooth the sides. It's a simple process, but there's an art to it, a rhythm that matches the quiet flow of the river. Historians still argue whether Vikings preferred birch for its antiseptic properties or simply because it was so abundant. Some say willow was used for its flexibility, while others swear by juniper's spicy scent and natural oils. There's even a fringe theory that moss was sometimes wrapped around the end, both as a cushion and as a way to add a gentle scrub. You try it yourself, winding a bit of moss around your finished pick, and find that it does feel pleasantly soft, like a tiny green toothbrush. As you carve, the conversation drifts from toothpicks to tales of the forest. Someone claims they once found a toothpick carved from antler, decorated with runes for luck. Another boasts of a pick made from driftwood that survived an entire season of raiding. You can't help but laugh when a young boy insists his father uses nothing but pine, because it smells like victory. The group erupts in gentle teasing, and you realize that the choice of wood is as much about personal pride as practicality. You examine your handiwork, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The pick is smooth, the tip sharp, and the moss adds a touch of Viking flair. You tuck it behind your ear, just like the others, and notice that everyone seems to have their own signature style. Some picks are long and slender, others short and stout. A few are carved with intricate patterns, tiny animals, or even the occasional rune. It's a subtle form of self-expression, a way to stand out in a world where individuality is often hidden beneath layers of wool and leather. As the evening deepens, the group shares tips for keeping toothpicks clean and sharp. Never use the same pick for more than a day, one man advises, or you'll end up with splinters in your gums. Another suggests dipping the pick in salt water to keep it fresh, while a third swears by rubbing it with a bit of honey for a sweeter taste. Historians still argue whether these practices were widespread or just the quirks of a few inventive souls, but you're happy to try them all. You glance around and see that toothpick carving is more than just a chore. It's a way to pass the time, to connect with others, and to prepare for whatever the next day might bring. The act of making something useful with your own hands is soothing, grounding, and you find yourself lost in the gentle repetition of carving, smoothing, and wrapping. As darkness falls, the group gathers around a small fire, sharing stories and showing off their finished picks. There's a sense of quiet pride, a recognition that even the smallest acts of care can make a difference in a world that's often harsh and unforgiving. You feel a kinship with these people, united by the simple desire for clean teeth and a bit of comfort at the end of a long day. You slip your new toothpick into your pouch, already planning the design for your next one. Maybe a bear, or a raven, or even a tiny Longship. The possibilities are endless, limited only by your imagination and the sharpness of your knife. As the fire dies down and the stars appear overhead, you stretch out on the soft moss, the scent of birch and wood smoke lingering in the air. You close your eyes, toothpick in hand, and drift off to sleep, dreaming of forests, rivers, and the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Morning returns with a chorus of birds and the gentle clatter of the crew preparing for another day's journey. You rise, stretching the stiffness from your limbs, and notice that the toothpick tradition is already in full swing. Around the fire, Vikings of every age are engaged in a ritual that's equal parts grooming and social hour, picking, chatting, and occasionally showing off their latest carved creations. You take your seat among them, your own birch and moss pick at the ready, and quickly realize that toothpicks are more than just tools here. They're a subtle language, a way to communicate status, skill, and even flirtation. You watch as a young man, hair neatly braided and tunic freshly washed, twirls his toothpick between his fingers with a practiced air. He catches the eye of a girl across the fire, arches an eyebrow, and flashes a grin. She responds by brandishing her own pick, a slender willow stick with a tiny heart carved at the end. The exchange is wordless but unmistakable. In the Viking world, even dental hygiene can be a dance of courtship. Historians still argue whether these gestures were truly romantic or just a bit of playful bravado, but you can't help but smile at the scene. Elsewhere, you spot a group of older men engaged in what can only be described as a toothpick duel. The rules are simple. Each man tries to flick a crumb from the other's beard without breaking his own pick. The contest is fierce but friendly, punctuated by bursts of laughter and the occasional good-natured groan when a pick snaps in two. The winner, a burly fellow with a beard like a snowdrift, is crowned Toothpick King for the day, a title that comes with bragging rights and, apparently, first dibs on the morning's best fish. There's an etiquette to toothpick use, too, and you quickly learn the do's and don'ts. Never point your pick at someone unless you're challenging them to a duel. Always clean your pick before tucking it behind your ear. And above all, never use someone else's pick without asking, unless you want to start a feud that could last until next spring. These unspoken rules are passed down from parent to child, reinforced by gentle teasing and the occasional stern glance from a matriarch. You notice that toothpicks can also serve as subtle weapons of etiquette. A well-timed pick can signal boredom, disapproval, or even impatience. During a particularly long-winded story, one woman begins cleaning her teeth with exaggerated care, making it clear she's heard enough. The storyteller, undeterred, only laughs and offers her a fresh pick, an olive branch in the form of birch wood. Historians still argue whether such gestures were common or just the invention of a few clever Vikings, but you suspect there's a grain of truth in every joke. As the morning unfolds, you see how toothpick culture weaves through every aspect of Viking life. Children are taught to carve their own picks as soon as they can hold a knife, and the most skilled carvers are admired for their artistry. Some picks are adorned with runes for luck or protection, while others are shaped to resemble animals, ships, or mythical creatures. There's even a rumor that the Jarl's daughter once received a toothpick carved from walrus ivory, inlaid with silver and amber, a gift from a would-be suitor hoping to impress her with both his wealth and his dental diligence. You try your hand at carving a new pick, this time adding a simple spiral pattern along the shaft. It's not perfect, but it earns an approving nod from your neighbor, who offers you a trade, his own pick, carved with a tiny bear, in exchange for yours. The swap is sealed with a handshake and a shared laugh, and you feel a sense of belonging, as if you've passed some unspoken test. The morning passes in a blur of conversation, carving, and gentle competition. By the time the crew is ready to set out, everyone has a fresh pick tucked behind an ear or slipped into a pouch. You shoulder your pack, feeling the reassuring weight of your own picks, and join the others as they head back to the Longship. As you walk, you reflect on the social side of picking, how a simple tool can become a symbol of connection, creativity, and even affection. In a world where life is often uncertain and harsh, these small rituals offer comfort, camaraderie, and a touch of humor. You smile, toothpick in hand, and step onto the boat, ready for whatever the day may bring. The day unfolds as you glide down the river, the Longship's hull slicing through water as smooth as polished glass. The landscape blurs into a tapestry of mossy banks, wind-bent trees, and distant mountains. But your mind lingers on the little things. The feel of the toothpick behind your ear, the taste of birch lingering on your tongue, and the subtle pride that comes from keeping your teeth clean in a world where mud is a constant companion. Cleanliness, you realize, is a daily battle for the Vikings. Despite their reputation as wild, unwashed barbarians, you see evidence everywhere that they care deeply about personal hygiene. The crew pauses at a shallow bend in the river, hopping out to stretch their legs and, more importantly, to wash. You join them, wading into the cool water, scrubbing your face and hands, and watching as others splash water over their heads or rinse their mouths with practiced swishes. The Norse may not have had fancy soaps, but they knew the value of a good rinse. Historians still argue whether Viking bathing habits were truly exceptional or simply better than their European neighbors. Some sources claim the Norse bathed once a week, on Laugardagr, or washing day, while others insist they took advantage of every stream and hot spring they found. You suspect the truth lies somewhere in between. After all, who could resist a quick dip when you're covered in mud and fish scales? You notice a few crew members carrying bundles of birch twigs and fragrant herbs. These are for the sauna, a sacred space in every Viking community. The steam bath is not just a place to get clean, but a social hub, a spot for gossip, matchmaking, and even business deals. You imagine yourself sitting on the wooden benches, steam curling around you, toothpick in hand as you listen to stories and laughter echoing off the stone walls. It's a far cry from the muddy riverbank, but the spirit is the same. Cleanliness as comfort, as community, as a way to mark the boundary between the wild world and the safety of home. There's a quirky tidbit you overhear. Some Vikings believed that rubbing their teeth and gums with charcoal from the fire could keep them healthy and white. You watch as one of the older men demonstrates, grinning as he rubs a bit of ash onto his teeth before rinsing with river water. The effect is striking, if not exactly pearly. Historians still debate whether this was a widespread practice or just a bit of old-fashioned showmanship, but you have to admit, it's memorable. As you dry off in the sun, you notice that even the youngest children are expected to take part in the cleaning rituals. A mother gently scolds her son for skipping his morning wash, handing him a moss-wrapped toothpick as a peace offering. He grumbles, but you see the pride in his eyes as he joins the others, determined not to be left out. Cleanliness, here, is a family affair, a way to show you belong. You reflect on the contrast between the Vikings' muddy, adventurous lives and their devotion to staying clean. It's a delicate balance, one that requires constant effort and a bit of ingenuity. The toothpick, you realize, is just one weapon in their arsenal, a tiny tool with a big impact. As the crew returns to the boat, you feel a renewed sense of appreciation for these small acts of care. You tuck your pick behind your ear, feeling the sun on your face and the river breeze in your hair. The world may be wild and unpredictable, but for now, you're clean, content, and ready for whatever comes next. You settle into your seat, the Longship gliding forward once more, and let your mind wander. Maybe tonight there will be a sauna, or a chance to try that charcoal trick for yourself. For now, you close your eyes, savoring the gentle ache of clean muscles and the quiet satisfaction of a well-picked smile. The river narrows as the day drifts on, and you find yourself lulled by the gentle slap of water against the hull and the soft murmur of the crew. But beneath the surface calm, the Vikings are a superstitious bunch, and the humble Toothpick is not without its share of odd beliefs and whispered warnings. You notice a young woman, her hair woven with blue glass beads, pause before using her toothpick. She closes her eyes, mutters a few words under her breath, and only then begins to clean her teeth. Curious, you ask about the ritual. She grins, revealing a gap where a tooth once was, and explains, "Never pick your teeth before sunrise, or you'll lose your luck for the day." Historians still argue whether such superstitions were widespread or just the inventions of a few creative minds, but you can't help but notice that several others wait until the sun is fully up before reaching for their picks. There's more. You hear tales of toothpicks carved with runes to ward off evil spirits, especially the kind that sneak in through your mouth while you sleep. One man shows you his pick, its shaft etched with jagged lines and tiny symbols. "Protection," he says, tapping it against his teeth, "against trolls, toothaches, and nosy neighbors." You try not to laugh, but the earnestness in his eyes suggests he takes it very seriously. Some believe that dropping a toothpick on the ground is a bad omen, especially if it breaks. The crew teases a boy who accidentally snaps his pick, warning him to toss the pieces into the river to appease the water spirits. He does so with great ceremony, bowing low and muttering apologies. You wonder if he's more afraid of the spirits or the ribbing from his friends. There's a fringe theory you overhear, probably started by a bored Skald on a rainy night, that toothpicks made from certain trees can grant special powers. Birch for luck, willow for wisdom, juniper for courage. You watch as a few crew members trade picks before a tricky stretch of rapids, each hoping to borrow a bit of extra fortune. Historians still debate whether these beliefs were genuine or just an excuse for swapping the best carved sticks. You also hear warnings. Never use a toothpick that's been in someone else's mouth, or you risk inviting their troubles into your own life. This, you suspect, is as much about hygiene as it is about superstition, but it's enforced with the same seriousness as any other taboo. You guard your own pick a little more closely, just in case. As the afternoon wears on, the conversation turns to stories of people who ignored the old ways and paid the price. There's the tale of a fisherman who used a toothpick at midnight and was plagued by nightmares for a week. Or the woman who carved her pick from a lightning-struck tree and lost her voice for a day. Whether these stories are true or just cautionary tales, you can't say, but they add a layer of mystery to the simple act of cleaning your teeth. You try carving a few runes into your own pick, copying the patterns you've seen. The process is fiddly, but strangely satisfying. When you're done, you hold it up to the light, half expecting to feel a surge of luck or courage. Mostly, you just feel a little more connected to the crew and their quirky traditions. As the sun dips lower, the superstitions fade into the background, replaced by laughter and the steady rhythm of the oars. You realize that, for all their practicality, the Vikings still made room for a bit of magic in their daily lives, even in something as mundane as a toothpick. You tuck your rune-carved pick behind your ear, feeling a little safer, a little luckier, and a lot more Viking. The world is full of unseen forces after all, and it never hurts to have a bit of extra protection, especially when you're facing down the unknown with nothing but a sharp stick and a smile. The river bends, and the Longship finally drifts to a stop beside a small settlement. You hop out, feet sinking into the soft earth, and follow the crew toward a cluster of turf-roofed houses. Here, the day's journey pauses for a different kind of adventure, one that takes you not forward, but backward, into the layers of Viking life left behind for centuries. It's time to dig, quite literally, into the past. You join a group of villagers bustling around a midden heap, a sprawling mound of ancient garbage, rich with secrets. The air is thick with the scent of damp soil and old bones, but you're assured that this is where the real treasures lie. Toothpicks, it turns out, are among the most common finds in Viking middens. You kneel down, sifting through the layers, feeling the rough edges of pottery shards and the smooth, slender shapes of discarded picks. Historians still argue whether these toothpicks were tossed away after a single use or kept until they wore down to nubs. Some archaeologists have uncovered picks with notches carved along their shafts, as if their owners marked each use, a kind of primitive dental diary. Others find picks snapped in half, perhaps broken in a moment of frustration or superstition, then ceremoniously discarded. You can't help but wonder about the stories behind each fragment. You pick up a particularly well-preserved birch stick, its tip still sharp after all these years. The wood is stained dark, the grain worn smooth by countless fingers. There's a faint scent of earth and time, and you imagine the hands that once held it. Maybe a young woman cleaning her teeth before a feast, or an old man whittling away his worries by the fire. Each toothpick is a tiny time capsule, a link to lives lived in the same rhythms you've come to know. There's a quirky tidbit you overhear from one of the local diggers. Sometimes, toothpicks are found alongside other personal items, combs, beads, even bits of jewelry. It's as if the Vikings treated their toothpicks as part of their daily kit, essential enough to be buried with or lost in the shuffle of everyday life. You imagine a pocket or pouch stuffed with treasures and tools, each item telling its own story. As you sift through the midden, you notice the variety in the picks. Some plain, others carved with patterns or runes. A few even tipped with bits of bone or antler. The craftsmanship varies, but the intent is always the same: to keep teeth clean, to show a bit of personality, to carry a piece of home wherever you go. Historians still debate whether these decorated picks were status symbols or simply the result of idle hands on long winter nights. You find a broken pick with a spiral carved along its length. The digger beside you speculates that it might have belonged to a Skald, a poet or storyteller, who used it as both a tool and a talisman. There's a certain poetry in the idea, and you tuck the image away for later, imagining stories spun around the fire, each word punctuated by the flick of a toothpick. The midden offers up more than just toothpicks. You spot fragments of combs made from bone, their teeth worn smooth, and bits of soapstone used for washing. It's a reminder that the Vikings, for all their reputation as fierce warriors, were deeply invested in the rituals of cleanliness and self-care. Even in their garbage, you see the echoes of daily life: meals shared, stories told, and teeth picked clean after every bite. As the sun sets, you brush the dirt from your hands and stand, pocketing a splintered pick as a keepsake. The midden may be a pile of ancient refuse, but it's also a testament to the enduring power of small rituals. You walk back to the village, feeling the weight of history in your palm and the gentle press of your own toothpick behind your ear. Tonight, as you settle by the fire, you glance at the pick you found, wondering about the person who left it behind. Maybe they too dreamed of clean teeth, good company, and the quiet comfort of a well-tended smile. In that moment, the centuries melt away, and you're simply another soul, carving out a bit of peace in a wild, wonderful world. The fire crackles, casting a warm glow over the small Viking household as evening settles in. You find yourself drawn into the quieter corners of the Longhouse, away from the boisterous laughter of the warriors and the clatter of cooking pots. Here, in the gentle hush of family life, you discover the unsung heroes of Viking dental hygiene, women and children. You watch as a mother gathers her children around her, each clutching a toothpick of their own. She inspects their handiwork, checking for splinters and sharp points before nodding her approval. With practiced patience, she demonstrates the proper technique. Gentle, circular motions, not too deep, always mindful of the gums. The children mimic her movements, some with more success than others, giggling when a pick slips or a bit of moss falls to the floor. Historians still argue whether it was the women who truly kept the family's teeth clean, or if this was a shared responsibility. Some suggest that mothers took special care to teach their children the importance of oral hygiene, especially in a world where a toothache could quickly become a serious problem. Others point to evidence that even fathers and older siblings played a role, turning toothpicking into a family ritual that marked the end of each meal. You notice that the picks used by children are often shorter and blunter, carved with extra care to avoid accidents. Some are decorated with simple patterns, dots, lines, or the occasional animal, while others are wrapped with colored threads or bits of cloth. There's a pride in ownership, a sense that even the youngest Vikings are entrusted with tools that matter. The mother shares a quirky tidbit. In some households, it's considered good luck for a child to carve their first toothpick before their 7th birthday. The resulting picks are often kept as keepsakes, tucked away in a pouch or hung from a beam as a reminder of growing up. You spot one such relic dangling above the hearth, its wood darkened with age, and imagine the small hands that once shaped it. After supper, the family gathers for a final round of toothpicking. It's a quiet, intimate moment, a chance to check in, share news, and wind down before bed. The mother hums a soft tune as she works, her voice blending with the gentle scraping of wood on teeth. The children lean against her, drowsy and content, their picks moving in slow, sleepy arcs. You're invited to join, handed a pick carved by the eldest daughter. It's a simple design, but the wood is smooth and warm from her touch. You settle in, following the rhythm of the group, feeling the day's worries melt away. There's a sense of belonging here, a reminder that even the smallest acts of care can bring people together. Historians still debate whether these family rituals were unique to the Vikings or shared by other cultures of the time. Some point to similar practices among the Saxons and Celts, while others argue that the Norse took special pride in their attention to cleanliness. You suspect the truth is somewhere in the middle. After all, what parent wouldn't want their child to grow up strong, healthy, and free from toothaches? As the fire burns low, the children are sent off to bed, their picks carefully tucked away for the night. The mother lingers by the hearth, carving a new pick from a slender birch twig. She offers it to you with a smile, a quiet gesture of friendship and trust. You accept, feeling the weight of tradition in your hand. You realize that, in this world, The care of teeth is more than just a matter of health. It's an act of love, a way to nurture and protect those you hold dear. The toothpick, humble though it may be, is a symbol of that care. A small, sharp reminder that even in the roughest times, kindness endures. You slip your new pick behind your ear, the fire's glow warming your face, and close your eyes. For a moment, all is peaceful. The laughter of children, the gentle hum of a mother's song, and the quiet pride of a family whose smiles are as bright as the flames. The Longhouse is quieter now, the children asleep, and the fire burning low. You sit with a few of the elders, swapping stories as the night deepens. Someone brings up the topic of Viking laws, a subject that, surprisingly, includes a few rules about dental etiquette and public grooming. You lean in, curious to learn just how seriously these Norse folk took their toothpicking habits. It turns out, the Vikings had a knack for codifying just about everything, from sheep theft to shipwreck salvage. And yes, even the act of cleaning your teeth in public could land you in hot water. Well, at least in a metaphorical sense. One elder recounts a tale of a man fined for spitting toothpick debris into the communal hearth, a grave breach of Longhouse decorum. Historians still argue whether such laws were written down in the famous Icelandic law codes or simply enforced by a stern look from the matriarch. But the message was clear. Keep your mess to yourself. You hear about the toothpick truce, an unspoken agreement that during feasts and gatherings, no one would point or wave their pick at another guest. To do so was considered not just rude, but a subtle challenge, almost as bad as questioning someone's honor. You watch as an elder demonstrates the proper way to rest your pick on the table, tip facing away from your neighbor, as a sign of respect. It's a tiny gesture, but it speaks volumes about the importance of harmony in a crowded longhouse. There's a quirky tidbit shared by one of the women. In some villages, it was believed that anyone caught picking their teeth during a formal assembly could be assigned an extra chore, usually something unpleasant, like mucking out the animal stalls. Whether this was an official punishment or just a bit of communal teasing, historians still debate. But you can imagine the embarrassment of being singled out for such a minor slip. You're told that, in rare cases, disputes over toothpicks could escalate to the thing, the Viking assembly, where grievances were aired and justice dispensed. There's a half-remembered saga about two neighbors who feuded over a borrowed ivory pick, their argument dragging on for months until the local chieftain intervened. The verdict? Each man had to carve a dozen picks for the other, ensuring that no one would ever be left wanting again. The story draws a round of chuckles, and you suspect it's grown in the telling. But the lesson is clear. Sometimes, it's easier to share than to squabble. You notice that even the act of spitting, so often paired with toothpicking, comes with its own set of guidelines. Always spit away from the fire, never towards a guest, and, if possible, do it outside. The elders recall a time when a careless spit nearly landed in the chieftain's mead, sparking a flurry of apologies and a new rule about keeping one's mouth and toothpick pointed in a safe direction. Historians still argue whether these laws and customs were unique to the Norse or borrowed from their neighbors, but you see echoes of them in the careful, respectful way everyone handles their picks. It's not just about cleanliness, it's about community, about maintaining the fragile peace that holds the Longhouse together through long winters and stormy nights. As the fire burns down to glowing embers, you reflect on the odd legal codes that govern even the smallest acts. The Vikings may have been fierce and independent, but they understood the value of order, of rules that kept everyone safe and comfortable, even if it meant a few extra chores now and then. You tuck your pick behind your ear, grateful for the wisdom of those who came before, and settle back against the wall. The night is still, the air heavy with the scent of smoke and pine, and you drift toward sleep, comforted by the knowledge that, in this world, even a toothpick can be a matter of law and legend. The next morning, you wake to the sound of foreign voices drifting in from the edge of the village. Traders have arrived, their ships heavy with goods from distant lands, furs from the east, glass beads from the south, and, perhaps most intriguingly, new faces with unfamiliar habits. You wander down to the docks, toothpick in hand, eager to see how the Norse customs stack up against those of their visitors. The Saxons are the first to catch your eye. Their clothing is different, longer tunics, more muted colors, and their approach to breakfast is equally distinct. You watch as a Saxon merchant unwraps a bundle of soft cheese and dark bread, eating with careful, deliberate bites. When he's finished, instead of reaching for a toothpick, he uses a small strip of linen to wipe his teeth. The Vikings nearby exchange amused glances, some mimicking the motion with exaggerated flourishes. Historians still argue whether the Saxons truly shunned toothpicks or simply preferred a different style of oral care, but you sense a gentle rivalry in the air. Next, you spot a group of Slavic traders, their beards braided and their voices lilting with unfamiliar words. They carry small wooden cases, each containing a set of grooming tools, combs, tweezers, and, yes, toothpicks. But their picks are shorter and stubbier, more like tiny spatulas than slender twigs. One Slavic woman demonstrates her technique, using the flat end to scrape her teeth clean before rinsing with a mouthful of river water. The Vikings watch with interest, some nodding in approval, others raising eyebrows at the novelty. Then there's the Byzantine visitor, resplendent in silk and gold, who draws a crowd with his elegant manners and exotic accent. After a meal of dried figs and honey cakes, he produces a toothpick made of bone, inlaid with tiny bits of colored glass. He cleans his teeth with practiced grace, then wipes the pick with a perfumed cloth before tucking it away in a jeweled case. The Norse onlookers are clearly impressed, and a few try to imitate his refined gestures, though most end up giggling at their own awkwardness. You overhear a Viking trader muttering that, for all their fancy ways, foreigners still have to deal with fish bones and barley husks just like everyone else. There's a quirky tidbit shared. Some claim that the Franks use feathers as toothpicks, though no one here has actually seen it. Historians still debate whether this is fact or just a bit of Norse exaggeration, but the image of a dignified Frankish lord with a goose feather between his teeth is enough to set the dockside crowd roaring with laughter. The exchange of customs goes both ways. You watch as a Viking woman offers a Slavic trader a birch pick wrapped in moss, demonstrating the gentle scrubbing technique. The trader tries it, nods thoughtfully, and offers her one of his spatula-shaped picks in return. It's a moment of connection, a reminder that, despite their differences, everyone appreciates a clean mouth and a clever tool. As the morning wears on, you see toothpicks traded alongside beads and furs, each culture eager to learn from the others. Some Vikings adopt the Slavic scraping method, while a few Saxons tentatively try out the moss-wrapped picks. the Byzantine's jeweled case becomes the talk of the village, inspiring a few ambitious carvers to plan their own elaborate creations. Historians still argue whether these cross-cultural exchanges left a lasting mark on Viking dental traditions or simply added a bit of variety to daily life. You suspect that, like so many things, the truth is somewhere in between, a blend of old habits and new ideas, shaped by the ebb and flow of trade and travel. By midday, the docks are alive with laughter and the clatter of goods being loaded and unloaded. You tuck your own pick behind your ear, feeling a little more worldly, a little more connected to the wider world. The Vikings may be fierce and proud, but they're also curious, eager to borrow the best ideas from wherever they find them. You stroll back toward the Longhouse, the sounds of different languages echoing in your ears, and realize that, in the end, everyone's just trying to keep their teeth clean, no matter what kind of pick they use. That evening, as the sun dips low and the sky blushes pink over the village roofs, you settle by the fire to hear a story that's as much legend as fact. The Saga of the Toothless Skald. The old storyteller, his beard streaked with gray and his eyes twinkling with mischief, beckons everyone closer. You lean in, toothpick poised, ready for a tale that's been passed down through generations, growing a little wilder with every telling. The Skald's name, you learn, was Egil, though some say it was Einar, and others claim he never existed at all. What everyone agrees on is that he was the finest poet in the region, able to spin verses so sharp they could cut through the thickest gloom. But Egil had one great flaw, an obsession with toothpicks that bordered on the legendary. He carved them from every wood he could find: birch, willow, ash, even driftwood washed up from distant shores. His picks were said to be so finely made that kings and jarls vied for a chance to own one. Historians still argue whether Egil's toothpick mania was a real affliction or just a colorful exaggeration. Some suggest he used his picks as inspiration for his poems, whittling away as he composed sagas that would echo through the halls for years. Others whisper that he believed each pick held a fragment of magic, a spark of the muse that fueled his creativity. The story goes that Egil became so fixated on his craft that he neglected everything else, including his own teeth. He would sit by the fire, carving and picking, until one day he let out a mighty yawn and realized, to his horror, that his last tooth had finally given up the fight. The Longhouse erupted in laughter at the sight of the toothless bard, his mouth as empty as a winter fjord. But Egil was nothing if not resourceful. He fashioned a toothpick so grand, a slender wand of polished birch, inlaid with amber and carved with runes, that it became his trademark. He would wave it like a conductor's baton, punctuating his verses with dramatic flourishes. The children adored him, the adults rolled their eyes, and the warriors swore that his toothpick could ward off bad luck and sour mead. There's a quirky tidbit that the storyteller shares. Some say Egil's toothpick was so powerful that it could calm crying babies and silence barking dogs. Others claim it was cursed, and that anyone who borrowed it would find themselves tongue-tied for a week. Historians still debate whether any of this is true, but the tale has become a favorite at gatherings, a gentle reminder not to take oneself, or one's toothpicks, too seriously. You listen as the storyteller weaves in details that feel both real and fantastical. Egil's rivalry with a rival Skald who tried to steal his prized pick, the time he used a toothpick as a quill to write a love poem, the day he traded a particularly fine pick for a sack of honey cakes. The line between fact and fiction blurs, but no one seems to mind. The laughter is warm, the fire is bright, and the story grows with every retelling. As the tale winds down, the storyteller leans in and winks. "So remember," he says, "never let your toothpick become more important than your teeth. Or your friends." The crowd erupts in applause, and you tuck your own pick behind your ear, feeling a little wiser, a little lighter, and a lot more entertained. You realize that, in the end, the saga of the Toothless Skald is about more than just dental hygiene. It's a celebration of creativity, community, and the joy of a well-spun tale. You smile, your teeth intact, and let the warmth of the story linger as the night deepens around you. As the fire burns low and the last echoes of laughter fade, you find yourself reflecting on the image of the Vikings you've always carried, mud-caked, wild-haired, and, if you believe the movies, in desperate need of a good bath. But after days among these Norse folk, you realize the truth is far more nuanced and perhaps a little more flattering. You recall your first steps into the Longhouse, expecting a wave of grime and chaos, only to find a world of small, deliberate rituals. The careful washing at the river, the communal sauna, the pride in a well-carved toothpick. The Vikings, it turns out, were far more invested in cleanliness than their reputation suggests. Historians still argue whether the dirty Viking myth was spread by jealous rivals or simply the result of centuries of storytelling gone awry. But the evidence you've seen points to a people who valued order, comfort, and a certain rustic elegance. There's a quirky tidbit you overhear from an elder. In some villages, a weekly bath in the sauna was considered as important as the weekly assembly at the thing. It wasn't just about scrubbing away the mud. It was about resetting the spirit, reconnecting with neighbors, and, yes, showing off your fanciest toothpick. You imagine the scene, steam swirling, laughter echoing, and even the sternest warriors relaxing as they clean their teeth and swap stories. You notice, too, the subtle ways the Vikings wove hygiene into their daily lives. Children are taught to wash their hands and faces, to keep their picks clean, and to take pride in their appearance. Women trade tips on the best woods for toothpicks and the softest moss for scrubbing. Men compete to see who can carve the sharpest, smoothest pick, and the winner earns bragging rights until the next challenge. These small competitions and rituals create a sense of community, a shared commitment to looking after one another. Historians still debate the finer points. Did the Norse use soap made from animal fat and ash, or did they rely on sand and water alone? Was the moss-wrapped toothpick a common sight, or just a clever innovation in certain regions? The answers may be lost to time, but the spirit of care endures. You see it in the way a mother gently checks her child's teeth, in the pride a young man takes in his carved pick, and in the laughter that follows a particularly creative toothpick duel. You think back to the foreigners you met at the docks, the Saxons, Slavs, and Byzantines, each with their own grooming quirks. Despite the differences, everyone shares the same goal: to feel comfortable, confident, and connected. The Vikings may have borrowed ideas from their neighbors, but they made them their own, blending practicality with a touch of flair. You can't help but chuckle at the thought of a Viking warrior, fresh from battle, pausing to clean his teeth before joining the feast. It's an image that doesn't quite fit the Hollywood mold, but it feels right. Honest, human, and oddly comforting. As the night grows quiet, you realize that the real myth isn't about dirt or grime, but about the resilience and adaptability of the Norse spirit. They found ways to thrive in a harsh world, to carve out moments of comfort and connection, and to celebrate the small victories, like a clean mouth after a gritty meal. You tuck your pick behind your ear, feeling a sense of kinship with these long-ago people. Their world may be gone, but their rituals live on, whispered in the crackle of the fire and the gentle scrape of wood on teeth. You smile, knowing that sometimes the simplest acts, like cleaning your teeth, can reveal the deepest truths. The Longhouse is nearly silent now, the embers in the hearth glowing softly as the village settles into sleep. You lie on your straw-filled mattress, wrapped in a woolen blanket, and listen to the gentle breathing of those around you. The day's adventures, carving toothpicks, trading stories, learning the subtle art of Viking cleanliness, have left you pleasantly weary. But there's one last ritual to complete before you drift off. The final toothpick of the day. You reach for your favorite pick, the one carved with a spiral and wrapped in a bit of moss, and run your thumb along its smooth surface. The fire's glow casts long shadows across the beams, and you notice others around you doing the same, each person quietly tending to their teeth, lost in their own thoughts. It's a moment of collective reflection, a gentle winding down that signals the end of another day. You clean your teeth with slow, deliberate motions, savoring the familiar rhythm. The birch wood is soft but strong, the moss still faintly damp from the riverbank. You remember the superstition about never picking your teeth before sunrise, and smile at the thought of all the little rules and stories that have shaped your time here. Historians still argue whether these bedtime rituals were universal or just the habits of a few particularly fastidious families. But tonight, it feels like everyone is part of the tradition. There's a quirky tidbit you recall from earlier, a whispered joke that the best dreams come to those who go to bed with clean teeth. You glance around and see a few sleepy grins, the kind that say, "We made it through another day." The youngest children, already half asleep, clutch their blunted picks like talismans, while the elders tuck theirs behind their ears, ready for tomorrow's first meal. The Longhouse creaks as someone shifts in their sleep, and you let your mind wander back over the day, the laughter at the docks, the friendly rivalry over carved picks, the warmth of the sauna, and the soothing hush of the evening's family ritual. You realize that these small acts, the care, the craft, the quiet moments, are what make this place feel like home. You slip your pick into the pouch by your bed, feeling the comforting weight of tradition and community. The air is cool, scented with wood smoke and wool, and you pull your blanket tighter, letting the sounds of the night lull you toward sleep. The world outside may be wild and unpredictable, but here, in the gentle glow of the hearth, you're safe, clean, and content. As your eyes grow heavy, you hear one last sleepy joke from across the room. Don't let the tooth trolls bite. The laughter is soft, barely more than a whisper, but it carries the promise of sweet dreams and an easy heart. The fire has faded to embers now, casting only the faintest glow across the Longhouse. You breathe in the warmth, the lingering scent of birch and moss, and let your body relax into the softness of your bed. The sounds of the day, laughter, stories, the gentle scrape of toothpicks, have all quieted, replaced by the slow, steady rhythm of peaceful sleep settling over the village. Your thoughts drift, unhurried, back through the gentle rituals that shaped your day. The careful carving of a new pick, the soothing hush of the sauna, the comfort of family gathered close. Each memory is soft-edged, like a pebble smoothed by the river, and you let them flow past without holding on. The world outside is distant now, its worries softened by the safety of the Longhouse walls and the company of those who share your simple joys. You feel the weight of the blanket, the warmth of the fire's last breath, and the quiet pride of a day well lived. There is nothing left to do, nothing to fix or finish, just the slow, gentle settling into rest. Your breath deepens, your muscles loosen, and you let go of the last bits of tension, like moss slipping from a well-used pick. If your mind wanders, let it drift, following the quiet current of sleep. The Norse night is long, but here you are safe, cared for, and at peace. Let the hush of the Longhouse carry you, the softest lullaby, into dreams as calm and clear as the river at dawn. Good night, Viking. Sleep well.